Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Wormsley and Nathan Wrigley.
Hello there and welcome to the WP Builds podcast. This is episode number 170, entitled Page Builders versus the Block Editor, a.k.a. Gutenberg. It was published on Thursday the 12th of March 2020. My name's Nathan Wrigley and I'll be joined in a few moments by David Wormsley, and we're going to be having a bit of a change today because rather than doing a discussion, we're going to be having a debate, but I'll tell you more about that in a moment. Before that, a few bits of housekeeping. Please head over to wpbuilds.com. I've got a bunch of links I'm going to mention, as I always do. It's just a way of me keeping in touch with you. We've got a whole bunch of WordPress content on that website. And so the first link is wpbuilds.com/subscribe. Over there, you're going to be able to join 2 email lists. The first one will alert you to the content that we produce. So that might be the podcast that you're listening to now, or the weekly WordPress news that we put out every Monday. Also, there's a list on there where you can sign up and I will alert you every time I hear about a WordPress deal as soon as I hear about it. It's a very simple plain text email and the title is self-explanatory. You can either bin it or open it if it interests you. So that's wpbuilds.com/subscribe. And again, on that page, there are links to sign up on your favourite podcast player, join our Facebook group of over 2,400 WordPressers, and a whole bunch of other stuff as well. The next page is the deals page, wpbuilds.com/deals. And over there, you're going to find a permanent list. It's a bit like Black Friday, but every day of the week. Coupon codes for WordPress products and services. And you never know, you might find exactly what you're looking for there for a significant amount off. So that's wpbuilds.com/deals. And lastly, wpbuilds.com/advertise if you would like to have your product or service put in front of a WordPress specific audience. Right, let me tell you about the change that we've got today. Usually, David and I, every couple of weeks, we do a discussion where we talk about a particular WordPress subject, something to do with agencies or WordPress website building, and we normally get along. And the idea is we're going to make it a tiny bit more adversarial, although, as it turns out, David and I are not very good at being adversarial, so we're quite in agreement on a lot of points. Nevertheless, the idea is that one of us take a particular position and the other one takes a contrary position and argue it out. So today it's Page Builders versus the Block Editor. I'll let you listen to the episode to decide for yourself who is the winner, but we present a whole bunch of arguments about why one might be better in the past, in the present, and in the future. And obviously there's a whole bunch of differences, an array of different things that you can do with each of these, and so you'll have to make your own mind up. But anyway, it's an interesting new format, and I hope that you enjoy it.
Hello, this week's discussion, well, isn't a discussion. It's a debate entitled Page Builders versus Gutenberg, and it was kindly suggested by Peter J Ingersoll. So, to put a bit of background to this, to avoid things getting stale, Nathan and I decided that we'd mix it up for a little while and challenge ourselves by arbitrarily taking on each side of kind of well-known debates in WordPress. So the idea is that it'll help us to kind of dig a little bit deeper into certain topics, give us a bit of focus and force us to look at some other perspectives. What do you want to say on this, Nathan?
I'm going to say you're going down, Wormsley. No, that's not what I'm going to say. No, we're going to be very gentlemanly about this. And I think it's probably important to say, you said at the beginning, it's really arbitrary. So in a sense, we're both assigning our positions by the toss of a coin, really, for want of a better word. So it could easily have landed that I was arguing the other side, and so I guess it's important to say that it's not like anything we're about to say is an entrenched position. And actually, during our chat beforehand, we were able to come up with contrary positions to our own positions, which was really interesting.
I know. We ended up, didn't we, kind of in the same place at the end of this debate. So it's going to be hard to kind of dive in again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so one thing I want to say right from the outset is that I was listening to a Stephen Fry podcast just yesterday, and it was all about Gutenberg, the actual person, Gutenberg.
Oh.
And he said Gutenberg, and I trust Stephen Fry. So I'm now going to start saying Gutenberg instead of Gutenberg, which is how I've been saying it from this point prior. So yeah, I'm going to be taking the Gutenberg position, and you're going to be taking the page builder position. So the idea is the principle is that one of us is trying to knock the other one down. We're trying to prove that one is better than the other. Whether or not we'll achieve that, or even advance the debate in any way, remains to be seen.
Yeah, well, we're going to keep it friendly as well with this one. We don't want to insult anybody if we can avoid it, but we might get heated. Who knows?
Yeah, well, let's see. This one was suggested in a Facebook post that David put together with a slightly inflammatory picture of boxers. Peter Ingersoll suggested that we do page builders versus Gutenberg. There were many other suggestions, but we'll get to those in the weeks to come.
Yeah, so I'm in the red corner, you're in the blue corner, and I'm going for page builder. So let's get. Should we just actually put a little bit of background? I think the format, we should set up the debate properly, shouldn't we? Because this easily could be a page builders and Gutenberg versus just Gutenberg. We are kind of imagining that Gutenberg is a threat to page builders with this one, aren't we? A little bit.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. So the idea is that one of them is trying to beat the other one into submission and take all of its market share, which of course isn't how it's actually playing out, but yes.
Yeah, and it's probably not true at all. So we're going along with that because, I think there's a popular perception that we're taking on board that it is one of the two will, lose out in the long run.
Yeah,
and the winner will be Gutenberg. But let's see. Yeah. I'm arguing for page builder. So shall I just kick off with a few of the things that why I'm on the page builder side, or at least my persona is.
I think in a normal debate, you get a certain amount of a very fixed period of time in which to say your piece, and then I get to respond to that. But let's not make it quite so formal. You just talk about page builders. I will promise not to interrupt, and then if you can, give me the same courtesy, then we can just start nattering.
Okay. Well, first off, it's really that I use a page builder and it works for me now. It's proven success. Clients like it. I can't do the same thing very easily in Gutenberg. So for that reason, right now, page builders just win out for the things that I need to do. But on top of it, I think the acceptance of page builders of Gutenberg isn't as strong as it is with page builders. So if you look at most of the popular page builders out there, they've got 5-star ratings. There's very few people that kind of leave it and don't use it. When you look at Gutenberg and it still remained the same, I know we're judging the plugin alone, and that's probably not a true representation. It's only got 2-star ratings, so 1 out of 4 users like it. So it doesn't seem to be connecting with people, and I think that's going to be important for the future of WordPress, that there is a platform that people feel that they can use instantly straight away, not something that's just built for developers, or something that in the future may be a wonderful thing, but we're not quite sure what that wonderful thing is actually going to be at the moment. Shall I go on? I'll go on with a few of my other points. My
I'm quite happy to give you as much time as you like, or you can arbitrarily stop when you think you've made your opening remarks. It's up to you.
Yeah, I've got so many points here, though. So I think the usability of it is one of the things, but also the fact that the core of WordPress is always run on PHP, which more people can understand and develop on it. So it is a kind of platform which I think WordPress's success has always come out of the fact that it's a platform that many people can develop on it. And because of that, it means that we've got a lot of true commercial competition with people building some wonderful things, including the page builders on it. And why I feel page builders are great is because I've got the choice now. I can pick from a whole bunch of page builders who are meeting a particular audience, where I feel Gutenberg is perhaps appearing to attempt to be the same thing, but it's got to appeal to everybody. So I like the idea that there's lots of competition out there, and I can pick the unit that's going to work best for me and what I need to do and for my clients. And actually, I'll pause there so you can take on some of those things that I've said.
First of all, I'll just make my positions completely unrelated to yours, if you know what I mean. So I won't respond to those. I'll just make some opening remarks, if you like. And the remarks that I would make would be, firstly, and these are in no particular order, there's no sense that the stuff that I say first is more important, I think, but they're just the order in which they come out. So The freedom, and by that I mean literally the dollar cost, I think is quite significant. So as an example, a page builder, there are free versions, but they don't do everything. Whereas the Gutenberg project and all that it will become is going to be free. It's going to be rolled up into WordPress core until something else comes along to replace Gutenberg, which no doubt at some point it will. And it's going to be completely free to use. So that barrier, the economic barrier, which for most people living in the West is probably not significant, stomping up $99 or $199 is not always too tricky to do, whereas perhaps in other parts of the world that might be tricky. And so WordPress's mission to sort of democratize publishing shouldn't have an economic barrier attached to it, and Gutenberg enables that to happen. It's completely free to use forever and ever, amen. The other thing I would say is that it's built on a bunch of technologies. Now, although I am going to refer to what you said because you talked about PHP and what have you, it's built on a bunch of technologies which I'm not going to make any claims about understanding. I don't really know what the benefit of building in React is, as an example. But the direction of travel for web developers seems to be going in the direction of technologies like React and using more JavaScript. So it's not relying entirely on the server-side technologies like PHP and so on. It's enabling it to do more. And although I don't know what that will look like, I do like the idea of a technology which is just in its infancy, and the things that we're just beginning to see are the tip of the iceberg. And my imaginings are that a few years from now, we'll look back and we'll be amazed by what things like React and the ability to do things in JavaScript more have allowed us to do. And I think that'll be good. The other thing is there's going to be a focus by the WordPress community on the code not being particularly bloated. Now, I can't guarantee that, but I'm imagining that there'll be I'm imagining that the code output by a page builder with all the bells and whistles which they now have will be considerably more bloated than that will be put out by the block editor. I mean, it's a very, very, very light footprint. And I'm thinking about just, for example, putting together a post with text. You've got a very, very small footprint in the HTML output, whereas with a typical page builder, you are divs within divs within divs within divs just to achieve a simple basic layout. So that's quite important. Obviously, that's an SEO benefit, but nice clean code always helps. Also, in the future, I think that because it's going to be in core, I think the audience for Gutenberg will, I said it wrong, Gutenberg will grow. And so the resources over time will improve. And I think at the moment we're in a period where the resources are fairly poor. Everybody's making resources for the complexities of page builders. And I think, well, I hope that at some point that balance will tip. The seesaw will go in the other direction and we'll get a bigger audience and more interesting, I don't know, tutorials and resources and videos and what have you. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff attached to it. So, it's happened. It's already occurred. It is part of core. And is it a bit of a needless fight trying to sort of stifle it and say, I'm not going to use it, I'm going to go off and fork WordPress, or I'm going to use a page builder? And I just think, get with the community. The community, the WordPress project has decided, and I'm sure we'll get into that in a moment, the WordPress project, whatever that means, has decided that this is going to be in core. And so why fight something which is, is already happened? It's in there already. The other thing, I suppose, is because of the magnitude of Gutenberg's install base, and bear in mind that from this point on, every single install of WordPress, new install of WordPress, will have Gutenberg in it, all of them. And so I think developers are going to have to accommodate it. And with that in mind, I think there'll be less conflicts. You'll have people developing specifically around the page builder, the Gutenberg page builder. I've done it again, Gutenberg page builder. And so in the future, I think there'll be less plugin conflicts. Things will work more with Gutenberg because it just makes sense to develop for Gutenberg. Whereas if you're using, let's say, Elementor, Divi, Beaver Builder, whatever it might be, you're going to be stuck with a solution for which some things work, but for which other things don't. And again, I could go on, but I think I've probably rabbited on enough.
Well, then I'm going to counter some of yours. So the free for all. Under GPL, aren't all of them free for all? What you pay for is the support. What support are you going to get for Gutenberg?
Yeah, it's a good rebuttal, and not one that I've got an adequate answer for. But I think it's fair to say we all know that GPL is a kind of like an interesting philosophical position. But you still put your hand in your pocket. I mean, I certainly do. I don't go to those clubs, and I don't. I do pay for the support, and I do pay for it. So there is an economic cost. If I, for example, download one of those premium versions of the page builders, it's implied, isn't it? And very, very, I would say it's an expectation that you are going to pay for it. And so I literally mean that. There is zero expectation to pay for anything. If you want the support for Gutenberg, well, that's going to be a community thing. You are not going to get a dedicated support channel, but you will have millions and millions of helpful users in the community helping you out, he said, trying to quickly move on. But yeah, fair point. But the GPL, I think, in that case, is a bit muddy.
Yeah, it wasn't so fair, because I think most people don't realize they're paying for the support more so that they get the updates, don't they? And I think, for most people using WordPress, they wouldn't really know the ins and outs of GPL. But anyway, but there was another one. Let me just maybe throw. So I agree that it appears that JavaScript and React will allow us to do much more in the future. Here's my problem. PHP, which people can use, seems to have withstand. It's like a cockroach. It's everybody, since I've got into this, have been saying PHP isn't a great language, but we still seem to innovate using it, and it's more accessible to more people. For me, page builders are winning because they're showing more innovation with PHP than Gutenberg is presently with JavaScript.
Yeah, and I actually can't agree with that. Can't disagree with that. And I think you're right. But again, I'm going to express my ignorance at this point. I'm not entirely familiar with where the journey is intended to become. I'm not really that sure. But looking at the capabilities of SaaS platforms and all sorts of resources that I use online, things like email clients and editing software for images and so on. I feel that a lot of these technologies are probably built with those things. They're leveraging those things, and so it's more for the future. It's going to enable things which a simple server-side framework like PHP can't do. And you're right; it is amazing what things like page builders have done, but my guess is that the vast majority of the stuff that you're interacting with is JavaScript anyway. Although built with PHP, things just sort of saving asynchronously and being able to move things around on the page and drag things and all of that is built largely, I imagine, with these new technologies. So I'm not sure. I think if we stuck only with PHP, my guess would be that WordPress would die a slow and painful death. So we've got to adopt these new technologies, and the other thing would be that I'm sure that the next generation of developers, the people who are at university studying this stuff at the moment, they're probably not spending a great deal of time working on PHP and so on. I imagine that the track to employment is going to be based upon the future technologies and not on the technologies that are kind of widely used over the last 10 years. That would be my guess. Yeah, it's hard for me to disagree with that one. Shall I go in for what I guess is my worry, I guess, and why I'm a little bit more on the page builder side? So if WordPress has remained this very simple core where everybody can kind of build on top of it, we can get this innovation from more people. But as it appears to me, Gutenberg is kind of, or rather Automatic via Matt, has kind of the control on how WordPress is going, and Gutenberg is his thing. But does he have a history? Does them as a company have any history of innovation? All the innovation I've seen, the most key things like being able to easily change headers and footers have been a pain in WordPress for over 15 years until page builders came up with a simple way of addressing that. That didn't come out of Automatic. And also, when I look at Automatic,
its history is that, WordPress is forked from B2, so that wasn't created. It has a Kismet, it has Jetpack, which is, a combination of a lot of bought plugins by somebody else. It has WooCommerce, again, invented by somebody else. Where's their kind of history of being innovators?
It's an interesting argument, isn't it? But I suppose the counter argument would be that the innovation is to allow other people to innovate. They've built this platform with a plugin architecture and a theme architecture, which is people can bolt their own innovations onto. And WordPress, its mission is not to be for the 1%. It's not to satisfy, this little crowd over here who've got this burning desire to achieve a certain task. Its desire is to build a platform on which anybody else can build anything else. So I think the mantra is something along the lines of, if 80% of the people need it, it'll go into core. So my counter argument to that would be, WordPress's job is not to do the innovation necessarily. It is to provide the framework upon which other people, through their plugins and what have you, their committed code, can innovate. And so page builders are a perfect example of that. If we hadn't have got a plugin architecture, probably WordPress wouldn't have taken off, but it did. But it allowed your page builders to sit on top of the shoulders of giants. And so that would be, I guess, my counter argument. Its job is not to provide, everything to everybody. It's to provide the framework, the foundation, the architecture, the community, the documentation, so that other people can come in and innovate. And in this case, that I think is what we're just beginning to see. So, we had controversially WordPress at version 5, November 2000, and I'm going to say 2018, I think that's right, launched with Gutenberg included, and there was a lot of disagreement within the community about the direction. And we've had, since then, 14 months of toing and froing, negative reviews and all of that, and people forking WordPress and going off in their own direction. But I feel that in the last few months, certainly within the last 6 months, the framework that Gutenberg has given us is starting to bear fruit. So we're seeing, for example, we're seeing a proliferation of companies who have decided that they're going to invest their time and resources into building block packs which ostensibly achieve the exact same thing that modules do in page builders. So it might be a grid layout, or it might be a way to have custom separators, or it might be a way to interact with the typography and so on. And so the innovation isn't what we see. The innovation is providing the platform for other people to innovate and produce third-party solutions which will enable us to achieve, in the end, the same results. I feel that was very long-winded. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Okay, let me go on another point here. Maybe I was looking, and I shared this in the Facebook group for WP Builds, at the Google Trends for the term WordPress, and you could see that it peaked in about 2004 and has been on a descent since. And the interesting thing about it, through the discussion, you looked at all the associated terms. You thought, well, perhaps so many people know about WordPress, so they're not going to type that in. But if you look at other things like how to install WordPress, WordPress tutorials, they show the same kind of pattern of decline. So some people's view, and I think there's some truth in this, or at least we can't exclude it, is that the page builders out there are growing in numbers. We know that Elementor's 4 million, Divi's probably something very similar. If you combine them all the ones that are on Theme Forest, that is really, really popular, and we don't really talk about those in the closer WordPress communities, they are probably bringing people to WordPress, not the other way round. So what I'm wondering is, could this be a problem that Gutenberg will at some point get in the way of page builders, and page builders should be allowed to build on a very simple framework without Gutenberg impeding their efforts.
Yeah, interesting. The first rebuttal, I suppose, would be, so it's going down in Google Trends, but the number of installs as a percentage of the top 10 million websites is going up. So we're now at 35%, and I suppose from my side of the argument, that's the important statistic. Whether people are searching for it in Google is kind of immaterial, because all we need is the user base to grow, which it is. And you only have to attend events for the last, well, I haven't, but if you've been attending WordPress events for the last 10 years, you'll see that the number of people attending those events is increasing. I concede, I'm sure you're right. I'm sure that there's a huge amount of people who are coming to WordPress via plugins, page builders. So, for example, Divi, Elementor, Beaver Builder. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people who probably are largely unaware of what WordPress can do. They may never even interact with it, in the sense that they don't go into the admin other than to maybe click a button which says, add new page, or to fiddle with their menus. But I don't see that particularly as a problem. After all, oh, sorry, you carry on.
I think the problem was because, almost as soon as Gutenberg was announced, a couple of page builders closed shop. Right. Because the work that they would have to do to accommodate the change in WordPress meant that they could no longer continue. So there's an argument here that if the core doesn't remain this simple platform, which it always has been, which has created this big environment, that if they start to do more for us, like Gutenberg has, so now I get messages telling me when there's failures on my site, which I may not want, or my clients may not want. And there are other things which have been, if you like, forced. And that's probably the issue with Gutenberg, isn't it? Because, again, another thing, what I wouldn't expect, because they were open to commercial competition, is that a new version of an interface from a page builder that I was paying for would come out, even though most people were complaining it's not ready yet. That wouldn't happen. They would make sure that it was user tested enough for it to come out. Now, Gutenberg is allowed to get away with that. It did its proper user testing, after it was already out. Yeah, it didn't do very well.
Yeah. I concede the way that it was rolled out was not, probably with hindsight, the best way of managing it. But I would make this point, that if you were to go back and, let's say that you take the classic editor as it was the day before Gutenberg was rolled into version 5. So, the classic editor, which we all knew and we all were familiar with and people cherished. And then you got, let's say, 100 people, and you sat them down and said, right, here's what I want you to do. I want you to make a post. I want you to add some color to the background. I want you to change the fonts around a little bit, so this portion is a little bit different to that one. Maybe you've got a color over here or a bold over here. Make some headings for me, please. And also give me a couple of columns and add some text in there, and stick an image in that column, and next to it put some text with bullet points and so on and so forth. Just see what happens there. And my guess would be that the novice 100 users using the classic editor, almost none of them would be able to achieve any significant amount of that. But give them the Gutenberg editor, albeit with its faults and its failures, I think a significant amount of them would achieve a significant amount of the task set. So there's no doubt it's a better experience. Is it perfect? No. Has it got a roadmap? Yes, and it's a good roadmap. It's got an awful lot of really nice stuff in it. But I think it's better. It is significantly better. It's the future, and it just does more. It does more. But I think the problem that it's got is that it was born into a world of page builders. They already existed. Gutenberg has to keep up with Elementor and Beaver Builder and Divi and Breezy and all these things, these fabulous technologies that have made it so trivial to do such difficult things. We could both agree that if we went back 5 years and tried to achieve some of the layouts that we can now throw together in, honestly, seconds, that would have been so difficult. It would have involved us literally typing out code, messing with template files, all of that nonsense. And now it's easy. And Gutenberg, the WordPress crew, the team, the community, had to keep up. And again, we haven't mentioned this actually yet, but remember, in the background of all of this is the leeching of the market share to third-party platforms like Wix, Weebly, Squarespace, and all of that, and they're fabulous interfaces. And WordPress's interface felt awful in comparison, so clunky. So they had to innovate, but it felt like the innovation was, well, they're building a page builder. And actually, if you look back, that was never really the claim. It was to build a better experience, to build something which was simply a better experience. To begin with text, and then along come columns, and then along come images and resizing and background colors and all of these things. And it's a trickle. And I don't know if the end result is to have something like Elementor, where what you see is really what you get, or if it's just a framework for blocks to do maybe not exactly what you see is what you get, but quite close.
Are you making... Sorry, carry on.
No, and so I was just going to say we've kind of got this false debate in a way, because the question is assuming that Gutenberg is trying to be a page builder, whereas I'm not sure that it is. It's just trying to be a great editor. And certainly from my point of view at the minute, is it as good at achieving complicated layouts as a page builder? No. Is it better than the classic editor? Oh yeah, way better. So, we'll have to see.
But I can use your argument against you here. So, if and it did start off with Matt on one of his State of the Word talks, talking about Wix and Weebly and their budgets and how they needed to compete with it, and how Gutenberg was that. So, but what they're competing with there is a page builder. And I see most of the blog posts where people are looking at Gutenberg and how we can use it these days are comparing it with the page builder, how they could build a website with this against building a website with a page builder. It's one or the other. They're not looking at it as whether they work together. And this is one of the confusions, I think, why page builders at the moment are winning for me, is because although it's not very clear, I think the page builders have a kind of audience they're aiming for. So I think, kind of Divi and Elementor have got a really wide audience. They've got a lot. It's an all-in-one package, which they're claiming. Beaver Builder, the one that we use, is kind of a midway point between the real developer stuff, but it's kind of kept to simplicity for those people who are concerned about sort of reliability and bloat. We've got Oxygen that's appeared. That has really gone for the point that you're making for Gutenberg, which has gone for really clear, simple code output. So the solutions are already there without Gutenberg. And people don't understand what Gutenberg is yet, because many who are interested in it are saying, which point is this going to turn into something I can actually use to build my sites with?
Yeah, and I can't really argue with that. I suppose the direction of travel, where it's come from, and I've been following it and installing it even before version 5 came out, just to play with it, and it's gradually got better and better. But I am mystified by what it's supposed to look like, and that's, I think, the problem is it doesn't look like what we're expecting. And that goes back to what I was saying a minute ago about living in the world of page builders, where literally you click save and publish on your page builder. You're in the editor of your page builder and you click publish, and the only difference is that the UI for the page builder goes away. Everything else looks the same. Maybe the little boxes that go around the sections that you're interacting with, they disappear too, but basically everything looks the same. And that was the paradigm. That was what everybody was kind of expecting it to be like, because, blocks. Oh, yeah, blocks. That's familiar. We've got these kind of block notions in Page Builder. We drag in what we could call a block or a module or whatever it might be. And look, there it is. It sits there. But it would seem that was not what was on offer from Gutenberg. And it was communicated really badly. But the third-party developers have kind of getting rid of that problem, I think, and coming up with these blocks that do the sort of visual layout. And that is one thing that I think is going to be really important for Gutenberg. And it's this, that the layout will be the same no matter what blocks you put into it. So at the moment, if you... so this comes to the point of like vendor lock-in, single point of failure. If you're using Elementor and you've built a site with Elementor and you're familiar with it, that's great. Give it to somebody who's never used Elementor, they're going to struggle with that for a little period of time. And the same for Beaver Builder and all these other page builders. They're proprietary. They look proprietary. Everything's done in a certain way. Whereas the future for Gutenberg is everybody can tie into it, and the UI will be the same. And you will have, in the future, just the same as we do for plugins, there'll be a repository for blocks, and you'll be able to install them within the editor. You won't ever have to go away from it. And the only difference will be a new menu item will pop up on the right-hand side, and you'll be able to interact with what that block does and fiddle with its settings. But the point is, every single block will have that same UI, and so it'll make it a whole lot easier to use, I think. The other thing about that, getting back to the single point of failure, one hopes that the page builders stay around forever, but imagine, good grief, imagine if one of them went out of business, or they just weren't successful, and you've got all of your websites built with a particular page builder and they no longer operate. That's going to be a lot for you. Whereas if everybody's in this one WordPress system, there's no single point of failure, which I think is worth mentioning.
I guess my fear is it's the mixed message. So why I'm sort of arguing for the page builders is because we know where they are. I'm pretty sure that they are bringing people into WordPress that wouldn't be there otherwise, and that there could be a natural decline. I don't think that Automatic have shown any skills, particularly in innovation, or any skills in marketing to be able to reach people. The page builders do that. So if Gutenberg is to become something that we can recognize that we can build our whole sites with, that everybody wants to join because of Gutenberg, it surely is going to impact on the people who've gone with the page builders. So is there a kind of splitting of the audience? Could it be effectively bad for WordPress overall? Could it get to the point where, say, Elementor, who's growing so quickly now, decides, well, all I need off WordPress is quite simple. I can fork it and become my own system.
Yeah.
Because Gutenberg,
Yeah, I can totally see that. And I suppose that is a point of concern, is that the page builders grow to the magnitude where one or two of them could literally just completely remove the ability to interact with WordPress. But I suppose in a sense that plays into my hands, because then that's a point of concern for people with page builders who want to leverage WordPress. But even if, let's say, that one of these page builders does do that, I think that would be a mistake for them, because there's so much that you can't do without WordPress. So let's say, for example, you wish to build a shop, an online shop. Well, unless the page builder offers that functionality, which to my knowledge at the moment, they don't. They hook into other functionality, so WooCommerce or Easy Digital Downloads or whatever it might be. Unless it's going to be a very, very simple service that they offer and they split off and they just do pages, possibly posts, then yeah, they could maybe do that. But if WordPress is one of the great things about it that attracted me and probably you, was that the sky is the limit. If you can install a plugin or write a plugin or add some code, create some code, whatever, you can do all of this stuff, but you're not going to be able to do that without the CMS of WordPress behind it.
Yeah. Okay, well, let me take one, I think it's probably the last point I can probably make. So there's always the sort of talk about, well, it's here and it's the future. So, Matt's managed to get the horse to water, but is it drinking yet? And I think surely all the developers who have got a vested interest in making some money out of WordPress are going to invest some time. So that's going to be obvious anyway. But will they be able to make the same kind of money through providing blocks if WordPress is doing so much as they could by building a whole kind of world, really, like Elementor has, by putting everything in? Is there the same kind of money in it for making blocks as there might be for...
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and one that I've actually thought about quite a lot. I'm imagining, and I could be completely wrong about this, I'm imagining at the moment we're in this period where developers seem to be flocking to Gutenberg because it's of a maturity now where they can actually get something good to come out the other end. You know, that they design a block which, I don't know, offers the capability to show testimonials. Let's just pick that as an example. Now it would appear that the bits of Gutenberg are in place so that a testimonials block is a real thing. And at the minute, we seem to be going down the road of, let's put these big packs of blocks together. So we're offering on the repository, there's 10 free blocks that do a whole variety of things, and we'll do another 10, and because you've trusted us with the free ones and you like those, buy our 10 in our pack. I feel that the model might be different, and I feel that maybe it'll be buying them one at a time. So you'll just buy the testimonial block. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm far more likely to spend, let's say dollars for the sake of it, I'm far more likely to spend $5 10 times than I am $50. If you know what I mean. I know that sounds silly because it's the same amount of money, but let's make it a bigger amount. I'm far more likely to spend $10 20 times than I am $200 on one thing. So I think there's great opportunity for block developers to offer more affordable but profitable blocks that do 1-2 things, and maybe the whole, you know, or the tide raises all the boats. Maybe everybody will have a sort of slightly better experience. You'll only have the blocks that you need on your website. You won't have like 15 that you never use that are not doing anything. You'll only install the ones that you need. You'll potentially have spent more money because you were more willing to open your wallet for the 10 and then the other 10 and then the other 10, rather than, well, there's no way I'm spending $200 on that pack of blocks. I'm never going to use 90% of them. So I'm not sure. I think maybe there is an economic argument for Gutenberg as well, for the individual blocks. I hope it goes that way, because I would relish buying little. I mean, you and I have spoken so many times about a plugin that does one thing well being better than one that does 15 things okay. So that would be my counter argument there.
You've won me over. Actually, I've run out of arguments for the page builder itself. Well, maybe there's one I didn't throw in, which is presently, and I don't know even that holds up. But in terms of the issues reported for Gutenberg, they're higher now than when it was released.
Right. Yeah. I'm imagining that's a simple case of there's more eyes on it. I think at the beginning, people basically just ran away, didn't they? They ran away, and there was a lot of complaining about it. And a quick install, I don't like it, and then and then a lot of 1-star reviews, which didn't actually say anything. They were just a 1-star review with some barbed comment about how it didn't work or it didn't suit. There was an awful lot of very quick, rapid commenting with no comments whatsoever, just stars, and I think now maybe the reason that's sort of changing is because people are just sort of getting used to it a little bit more and interacting with it a little bit more, and so the comments are a little bit more thoughtful. They've had time to play with it and so on. Can I make one quick point? And that is, there is a chance, it's a slim chance, but it's possible that it will kind of bring the community back together in the end. Let's say that 5 years from now, we've gone through the roadmap of Gutenberg and we can now build entire sites. We don't know what that means yet, but we can do all of our headers and footers, and everything is taken care of block with blocks, and it kind of feels like a page builder. It has page builder features which we can't use at the moment in Gutenberg. Maybe that will unite the community, because at the minute what you can be sure of is that there's a lot of flame wars. I use this page builder, I use this page builder, this one's better than that one, and they're quite happy to sort of tear each other apart and be barbed about it. Whereas if we had one solution, that might be a good thing. Imagine the day before something like Visual Composer, which kind of felt like it kick-started all this thing. Everybody was just using the same interface, and it was probably a lot easier to get help. Now, everybody's split up in multiple different directions, and, we've made the whole community into little silos. And maybe if Gutenberg, I keep saying Gutenberg becomes the thing that a significant proportion of users are using, maybe it'll unite the project more.
It's a lovely idea, but I think there was flame wars with themes before it came along.
I was hoping you wouldn't notice that.
But actually, shall we go to kind of final thoughts on this? Because in some ways, we were arbitrarily taking positions.
And that's very important to say, because for every argument that you had, I could have, if the coin had landed on the opposite side, I would have been making the exact same points as you.
Yeah, and there's a lot I agree with, because I'm not anti. I have my concerns about the page builders, which I think you kind of made as well. But I mean, my concern is the one that I particularly hold, is the fact that if they grow so big, they've got to please more and more people to keep growing, and that's going to be what they want. And that means that they're going to be more all-in-one, which means they're going to have to pack in more stuff all the time. And that's my big worry about it, where I do believe, if the project is in hand, it will be less bloaty and more suitable for professional uses, where I think it's really tricky for page builders. They're almost dead in the water if they don't keep growing.
Yeah. And
if they do keep growing, they get so bloated, where you would hope that this Gutenberg project will allow us to do a lot more with the core, and control the bloat that we've got over it. So I am kind of for the Gutenberg, but it doesn't. But actually, truthfully, a lot of the arguments I made for the page builder are ones I believe in. I am a little bit concerned about how it was forced upon us, and about how the Automatic might understand the market and how people will use it. I think they've got a developer's mentality over it.
Right. Yeah. Oh, and I'm not going to disagree with that for sure. I think it was done in a way which divided. And I think everybody acknowledges that it could have been handled differently. I think maybe with the benefit of hindsight, there should have been a period of time in which it was simply an optional plugin. Maybe give it a year or 18 months to the point where it had developed and it had got a life of its own, and people had filed bug reports. But I suppose they just wanted to kickstart it, but I think there's regret. I think people up high probably think, we'll have a think, because it split the community, quite wide open, and all sorts of things happened. We had Classic Press, which came around, a complete hard fork of WordPress. Don't know quite how that's doing, but then we also had things cropping up like the WordPress governance project, because people were irritated by how this had been handled, and the feeling that their beloved CMS had been hijacked by powers unknown and unseen, in order to further the project in ways that they didn't really understand. All of it came down to communication. If it had been communicated differently, then it probably wouldn't have caused so much angst and ire. One thing that I see the page builders doing, and particularly Divi and Elementor, is they are very, very, very good at communication.
Yeah.
They release something, and then they spend an absolute fortune on producing quality documentation, quality videos to explain how it works. They've got a ton of developers and a ton of interested users who then create further tutorials and online stuff. And I think that would be a really useful thing for the WordPress project to invest money in. Have a bunch of experts who are good with documentation, who are good with video and so on, making videos to show, here's Gutenberg version 8.9. This is what's come out this month. In the same way that they do that with, the releases of WordPress. Every time you update WordPress to a new version, you get the little video. Communication's key, and I think they dropped the ball on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if Gutenberg is, as this debate is really about, but may not even be true, that it's kind of Gutenberg will take over from the page builders, then it really is going to need to communicate that. And if it's not going to make it easy for people to make money out of it, it's going to have to, within WordPress, find that money to communicate it, else something's going to get lost along the way.
Right. Right.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. So, our first debate is over. I feel like I totally whooped you, Wormsley. No, I'm joking. I feel...
Do you know what? I think that I maybe agree on this one. This one kind of is a draw because it might be a false dichotomy, really, with this one.
Yeah.
And I think that the ideal for me would be the conclusion that it was page builders and Gutenberg. You've got the choice to use your page builder. It'll link in with Gutenberg beautifully, and you can use all the good stuff that's in Gutenberg if you choose.
Yeah, and what a nice position to be in. What a nice position to have the page builder built on top of WordPress, which is also offering you, should you like it, a free version which does some of the stuff, but not quite all of it just yet. So yeah, I would agree. There's no right answer. But it was interesting chatting because it got a lot of stuff out, a lot of stuff that we've been alluding to for many, many years. We cover, by the way, on the news that we do on a Monday, we do cover a lot of this. And, I cover the ground that Elementor seems to be, making up, and what Gutenberg are doing, and Breezy and all of these other page builders. And so we sort of try to keep up with it. And it feels to me that Gutenberg is making some significant inroads, largely with these third-party providers providing blocks. So, yeah, the future, I think, is bright.
Brilliant. I think that's a perfect place to end it.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed that slightly new format, a bit of a debate instead of a discussion. We'll be carrying these on over the next few weeks and seeing how they go. But please, as always, drop us a note either in the Facebook group, wpbuilds.com/Facebook, or you could actually go to the post on the WP Builds website and use the comments at the bottom. Let us know what you thought, if you agree with anything that we said or disagree, or perhaps you thought you're not enjoying the new debating format, or maybe you are. It's entirely up to you. But would be very much appreciated if you keep in touch, because it's just nice to know that people are listening and getting something out of it. The WP Builds podcast was brought to you today by WP and Up. 1 in 4 of us will be directly affected by mental health related illness. WP and Up supports and promotes positive mental health within the WordPress community. This is achieved through mentorship, events, training and counselling. So please help enable WP and Up by visiting wpandup.org/give. Okay, we will be back on Monday. Every Monday at 7 a.m. UK time, I release a roughly 30-minute audio little podcast all about the previous week's WordPress news. I call it the WP Builds Weekly WordPress News. And then at 2 p.m. UK time, we will be having a live version of that news. In other words, we use that news as the talking points, and I'm joined by 3 or 4 guests live on the screen. It's really enjoyable, and we certainly enjoy interacting with your comments. So that's all happening. Anyway, if I don't see you for any of that, maybe we'll catch you back here next week. And all that remains for me to say is bye-bye for now.